Hello and welcome to Your Ghana, My Ghana. We're on Graphic Online TV and my name is Dede Amano Rhodes. Cocoa has been the mainstay of the Ghanaian economy for more than a century, but today the industry is beset by unprecedented challenges, and the rather grim question we'll be trying to grapple with today is, will cocoa be part of Ghana's future? My guests in the studio are Joseph Boahenedu and Edward Karewe. Honorable Joseph Boahenedu is the Chief Executive of the Ghana Cocoa Board. He was the MP for Amenfi East in the Western region for 12 years. Thank you, JB, as they call you, for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.
Edward Karewe is the General Secretary of the Ghana Agricultural Workers Union, known as GAWU. GAWU has 50,000 members, of which 33,000 are public sector wage earners, while the rest are formers and informal sector workers. Thank you, Edward Karewe, for being with us today.
Thank you for the honor to be here.
But before we begin our conversation, let's look quickly at the history of cocoa in Ghana and at the situation we find ourselves in today. Cocoa, the golden pod, has been so firmly implanted in Ghana's economic history that it is difficult, even traumatic, to imagine a future without it. When small-scale migrant farmers led the start of the cocoa revolution in the 1890s, few could have guessed that this would become the mainstay of the Gold Coast Ghana economy for the next 130 years. Though gold is the #1 export, the golden pod remains the mainstay of the economy because it provides income and security for 850,000 cocoa farm families, amounting to millions of Ghanaians. Gold is worth $6 to $7 billion a year, but is largely produced by multinationals who repatriate their profits overseas. By contrast, cocoa receipts worth about $2 billion a year all come back to Ghana, less the amount needed to import jute storage bags to meet European standards. In addition, whereas gold is a finite resource, cocoa is renewable. It was Tete Kwashi, an itinerant Osu blacksmith, who brought cocoa beans back from Fernando Po, now Equatorial Guinea, establishing the first commercial farm at Akwapim Mampong and sold seedlings, kicking off the cocoa revolution. The first cocoa frontier was opened up by migrant Akwapim, Krobo, Shai and Gar farmers who moved from southern or coastal areas into Achim forest areas, pooling resources and forming asafo or companies to buy strips of land. The astonishing rise of these migrant cocoa farmers has been compellingly documented in a series of books by Polly Hill, a Cambridge scholar who lived and worked in Ghana during the Nkrumah era. Within a space of barely 15 to 20 years, these forward-looking farmers had turned the Gold Coast into the world's leading producer of cocoa for the chocolate manufacturers of the early 20th century. This spontaneous and indigenously produced miracle took the British colonial government by surprise. It counts, alongside the humble mosquito's role in creating the so-called white man's grave, as one of the reasons West African lands were not alienated from local farmers and given to commercial white planters from Europe. After protests by the Aboriginal Rights Protection Society, formed in 1896, the West African Lands Committee was set up to deliberate whether land should be alienated to European settlers, as in Southern and East Africa, or be left in African hands. The committee recognized that the European farmers, despite their access to expensive capital equipment, could not compete with Tete Kwashi's land-hungry but determined followers, who they said had beaten all records in the world. Since that time, cocoa has proven to be a resilient crop, surviving outbreaks of swollen shoot viral disease and black pod, a fungus, which all but wiped it out. But today, the industry is threatened by a range of intractable problems requiring urgent political action. These include environmental threats, diseased cocoa trees, and cocoa smuggling related to the current high international prices. Key among environmental problems are the linked evils of climate change, deforestation, and the pollution of water bodies and destruction or sale of cocoa lands for illegal mining, known as galamsey. 7 years ago, when the international price of cocoa dropped more than 30% from $3,000 a ton in 2016 to $2,000 in 2017 and $1,850 in 2018, Ghana was the only country in the world that didn't reduce the price paid to farmers. According to Ghana Cocoa Board Chief Executive Joseph Wahin Edu. Illegal mining was about to explode in Ghana, and the market for land had become more attractive than cocoa. If we reduced the producer price, we would have lost all our cocoa farmlands to illegal mining. We had to protect them, he told the graphics, Your Ghana, My Ghana. Excavating the swamp areas around cocoa farms causes changes in the microclimate, disrupts the ecosystem, and kills cocoa trees in a short time by draining the soil moisture from beneath them. With the silting already caused by illegal mining, Wahin Edu believes there will be no rivers left in Ghana in 40 years' time. Ghana could take advantage of rocketing international prices for cocoa that have seen Cocoa Board increase its producer price for the current season by more than 58% to address some of the problems of environmental degradation and illegal mining. This year's spot prices of $7,000 to $8,000 a metric ton are the result of the supply challenges in both Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which overtook Ghana as the world's leading cocoa producer in 1978. Together, the two countries account for 60% of world cocoa production. Resolving these challenges requires the kind of urgent political intervention that is not usually seen during an election year in Ghana. But with countries such as Ecuador in South America and Indonesia in Asia gearing up to overtake Ghana's faltering cocoa production, this is an emergency every political party in Ghana should hang its hat on, or risk going down in the history books as having killed the industrial goose that for 130 years laid Ghana's golden poles. Gentlemen, let's talk first about cocoa's place in the Ghana economy. Cocoa is the mainstay of the economy. Is that correct? Can I hear from both of your perspectives? Is cocoa the mainstay?
It is. And I even put on another rank in that cocoa is not just the mainstay of the economy, but it's also the source of oxygen for our economy. In that it brings in, the needed foreign exchange. And I want to believe that it is one national commodity that brings in the hard currency dollars in total. If you take the minerals, gold, the bauxite, the manganese, even the oil, we have a lot of capital flight from Ghana. But in the case of cocoa, whatever is produced in this country, sold outside, comes back in the form of, United States dollars to support the economy. And anytime the cocoa money is not in, the cedi suffers. It means that the cedi is actually deprived of the needed oxygen.
Good.
And when the money comes in, then that's when you see the health of the cedi going up.
Mr. Karuwe, do you agree that cocoa is the mainstay of the Ghana economy?
Well, to a large extent, it is the mainstay, but I would like to say that it is the mainstay when it comes to bringing foreign exchange into this country, because agriculture is broader, and then the other part of
You're saying that agriculture is the mainstay?
Is the mainstay, which is
in what sense?
Which encompasses cocoa as well, So therefore, it's not out of place to say cocoa is the mainstay. So if agriculture is the mainstay of the economy, and cocoa is the mainstay for foreign exchange and into this country, and cocoa is situated within the agriculture sector, certainly we are talking about the same thing.
And in what sense is agriculture the mainstay or the backbone of the Ghana economy?
In the sense that if you look at the large proportion of this economy is based on agriculture, and then you also can see that it employs the majority of Ghanaian workforce. And then agriculture is so spread throughout the country, everywhere in the country. So you see, one, geographically it's located everywhere. Two, it creates employment for a larger proportion of the population. Three, the most vulnerable people, are covered by agriculture. They can find their jobs in agriculture. And then four, it provides the food for consumption, and then also the raw materials for our industry. And to cocoa, as Honorable Edu has said, the point here is that cocoa's revenue goes direct to the producers. It goes direct, it stays in the country, unlike any other, foreign exchange earner. I can say not even a single dollar is repatriated because those who produce cocoa in Ghana are Ghanaians. So there's no need for capital flight. Cocoa Board is Ghanaian institution. It has no business repatriating profits or whatever revenues, not say profit, any revenue anywhere. So this is one model that, in fact, I believe that if we had replicated it in the other parts of our economy, we'll be able to retain so much of the revenue or foreign exchange that we get into this country.
And I find it very interesting that you, as a representative of the Agricultural Workers Union, are saying this, that cocoa the receipts go directly, the benefits go directly to the farmer, because there has been a long-standing debate in Ghana's economic history and currently about whether the Cocoa Board exploits farmers or supports them. And you're saying?
Well, you see, when you look at things from the perspective, these are facts, and when you are dealing with facts, it's different from when you are interpreting the facts. The facts are there for all of us to see.
And the facts?
The facts are that who produce the cocoa? It is the farmers. Who get the producer price? It is the farmers. Cocoa Board, when they support the farmers with spraying and all that, where does the money go? It goes to the farmers. When the revenue comes to Ghana, where does Cocoa Board spend the money? It is on Ghanaians. You see that? So certainly, it is not an area that one can argue that Cocoa Board is exploiting farmers. What do they exploit the farmers for? And for whose interest? Look, the only thing one can sometimes see is that there's a school of thought that people think that when world market price is so much, then sale must be given to the cocoa farmer. That is, it's not feasible in the sense that there are, within the value chain, there's a value chain. There's operational cost. Who bears the operational cost? How are you going to fund the operational cost? He is here, the chief executive is here. He knows more about that, the details. But where I sit, I know that there's operational cost.
Right.
How is the operational cost going to be funded? So if at the end of the day, producer price is of a certain quantum, and someone thinks that literally it must be the same as what has been acquired from outside, that's the international market price, then that person simply is not realistic.
That's absolutely the issue, and I think we can put it to the executive, the chief executive of Cocoa Board, because that is really, the people look at the international price and they look at what Cocoa Board is paying the farmers. And even though, like recently, Cocoa Board has now announced, just in the last recent time, that it's now increasing the price by 58%, close to 60% for the rest of this season. People look at the international price doubling and think, oh, they're exploiting the farmer. They're keeping some of the money for themselves. Would you like to respond to this? Tell us what is happening. Why is the perception out of step with the reality?
That perception is absolutely wrong. In the sense that if you look at revenues generated from cocoa, in terms of administration, when I say administration, that's the entirety of Cocoa Board costs. That is about 4%. Imagine such a huge, industry and cost of administration.
The overheads,
management,
all the overhead amount to
is
just 4%.
Now, if you take the current situation, the farmer has a share of over 96% of the revenue. And then apart from that, there is a share given to those who go and buy cocoa. They're the companies. We call them the license buying companies. They take a share. And then when the cocoa is bought at the farm gate, it ought to be evacuated or transported, to the ports. We call that the buyer's margin. So that's also another share. Then you talk about the fertilizers, which are subsidized for farmers. And then the chemicals that we use in spraying. Every year, Cocoa Board has 48,000, libras to do the spraying free of charge for farmers.
Spraying of what?
Spraying of the cocoa trees.
With what?
Against these, with pesticides, with, that's insecticides and fungicides. And we buy machines as well every year and hire the 48,000 workforce to do this mass, that's what we call the mass cocoa spraying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done free of charge for the farmers.
Out of the 4%, not out of their 96%.
No, that's outside. The 4% is just for cocoa board because, the law of cocoa board, PNDC law, 81, that's, if you look at the statutory objective, it says that cocoa board should facilitate the production of cocoa. Mm-hmm. And cocoa board is even enjoined to also facilitate the production of coffee. Mm-hmm. And promote share as well. Mm-hmm. These are statutory, obligations on cocoa board. And to facilitate means that right from the planting material up to the point of harvest through to the sale of the cocoa outside the country, everything ought to be done by Ghana Cocoa Board. And a lot of such activities are done free of charge. We have to do research into the planting materials to get the hybrids. We have to do research into pests and diseases, the appropriate chemicals. So we have a whole entomology department, we have pathology department, you have plant breeding, department. You go to Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana, CRIC, that's at TAFO. They're doing all such research to ensure that the cocoa we produce is the best, not only of premium, but it's safe and it's also marketable, And all such research had to be paid for. So the process of even getting the planting material into the soil for the farmers had to call for heavy investment in that regard. And who pays? Is the state. The cocoa board has to pay itself for that. Then when the materials are, through research and everything are generated, they are given to our seed production division. We have a whole unit charged with the multiplication of the planting materials. And they do the nurseries and generate seedlings, which are then distributed to farmers free of charge to go and then plant.
Well, it's interesting that both of you here, both of our guests today are farmers. You are a cocoa farmer.
I'm a cocoa farmer.
And you farm rubber and palm, or oil palm, right? And so you have some insights, which perhaps most of us don't have. But Mr. Karewe, on that question, Edward Karewe, there are some people on the question of mass spraying to begin with. There's some people who say the farmer doesn't want you to come and spray for him. Give the farmer the money and he will spray or she will spray their crops themselves. What's your view on that?
Well, I think sometimes it's not one solution fits all. Mm-hmm. In some jurisdiction or some areas of production, the farmer could be left alone to spray anytime, anyhow. But when it comes to cocoa production, you have to look at what pests are they dealing with. Mm-hmm. If a farmer fails to spray, just because he or she has got a choice to spray or not to spray, what happens to the next farm? Mm-hmm. So the mass spraying is not because it is like any of the other pests or that are confined to your farm alone. So there must be mass spraying. So there are certain things if you...
Against diseases like swollen shoot, black pod. Is that why we need the mass spraying?
Yeah, the mass spraying.
Is there something particular about those diseases?
You see, the mass spraying, if you take capsid, for example, you have these insects that can move anywhere. Now, if we are farmers, let's say we have 3 farms here. If you spray and I don't spray, there's that propensity that the insects will run into my farm and to his farm. They run away, trying to escape from the chemicals. Now, after 2 weeks, when the effect of the chemical is down, they come back. They will come back to your farm. When they come, they've already developing resistance, and they will come and devastate everything. So it's important that when you are doing the spray, you do it contiguously. Ensure that every farm is sprayed. You don't leave any farm out. And that's the reason why you do this mass spraying. If you charge the farmers to do it on their own, of course, some of the farmers do not really do it on their own. And still, you have problem because adjoining farms that are not sprayed will be harboring these insects, which will then come back to sprayed farms. That is one aspect. The other aspect is that the chemicals ought to be thoroughly, checked by our scientists to be recommended for use. Because cocoa plant is so sensitive to everything that comes in contact with it, either through the roots or through the leaves. And it sort of picks some of these chemicals and then use it even in its fruiting. So the seed that is eventually produced may be having some of such chemicals in it. And therefore, the scientists are the only, agents or people that can calculate or research and see what chemical residue must be left in the cocoa. Mind you, we produce the cocoa here, all right, but we sell the cocoa, almost all of our cocoa outside, particularly in Europe. 80% of our cocoa goes to Europe. And Europe has standards that ought to be met. The sanitary and then the phytosanitary requirements of Europe demand that residue levels should be at a certain point. You don't have to exceed. And that's the work of CREC to do that. And then recommend the appropriate chemicals that ought to be used. The other aspect is that there are non-targeted insects. For example, the manges do the pollination. Once the flowers, the buds or the flowers open, you have to get insects to be doing the pollination, the natural pollination. And if you apply any chemical anyhow, it can affect or eliminate these manges.
So so 4% goes to overheads, 4%
Yes.
of the value of cocoa.
Yes.
And then of that 96%, how much goes to mass spraying and research and other things before you decide, or you decide before the producer price is decided before you allocate all these budgets?
The producer price is always decided by what we call the producer price review committee. Mm-hmm. It's a multi-stakeholder, body that decides the producer price. And once the sharing, so at the producer's price platform, the estimated, or what we call the achieved average price, is then used to decide what share should go to the farmer and what share to go to cocoa board, and so on and so forth. But always the farmer's share since 2017 have never been below 70% of the producer price. Aside the mass spraying, the fertilizers, and so on and so forth, have never been less than 70%. Now, let me touch on what is happening currently. You see,
yes, because the international price has gone up more than 100%.
Yes. More than
200%. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Price of cocoa used to be around $2,000. Mm-hmm.
And now it's
for the past 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly last year, April, it just shot up. First to $3,000. And then before we got to know, by December, price of cocoa was over $6,000. Mm-hmm. Last month, it was hovering around even $11,000, more than 4 times, more than even 5 times, the price, which it used to be the past 7 years. Now, what is happening is what is called inverted market. Inverted market. In trading, they call it backwardation. Over the period, we've been having normal market situation, which is called a contango. Now, contango is that if you are a buyer and I'm a seller, I'm a producer and seller, like Ghana Cocoa Board, that have vested that responsibility to Cocoa Marketing Company of Ghana, CMC Ghana, is a sole agent of Cocoa Board that sells cocoa for Ghana. And you are a buyer outside. What happens is that at the terminal market on any day, once we agree to buy and then sell, the price is determined. Now, in a normal market situation day, when you buy the cocoa, you are not buying the cocoa to go and grind immediately. You may need that cocoa maybe to resell, or even if it is for your own factory outside, you may need that cocoa to grind in 6 months' time or 1 year's time. And to keep cocoa in Europe, that's outside Africa, is very expensive. The warehouse cost, the insurance cost, to condition the cocoa to even, stay for 6 months, 1 year, is not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. So what the market does is to expose that risk to the seller, the producer. So over the period, Cocoa Marketing Company then is asked to hold on the cocoa. You are buying the cocoa today, but you cannot take it today. You take it, let's say, 6 months time or next year.
Those are future markets.
That's what we call the future markets, okay. The forward sale. Mm-hmm. And because of that exposure, the risk,
yes,
to Cocoa Board,
particularly at a time like this, you're exposed to that risk.
Now it's inverted. Then before then, the normal time, mm-hmm. because of that risk, mm-hmm. that is being the producer is being exposed to, additional money is given to bear that cost. So always the forward sales had been higher. The forward sales price had been higher than the spot price. That's under a normal situation. Mm-hmm. And that's the preferred. Mm-hmm. It's preferred by the seller. It's also preferred by the buyer. Because if the buyer buys the cocoa and then it sends to Europe to go and then keep in warehouses at high cost, insurance and all that, maybe for 6 months, it can even become moldy. He will want to expose that risk to the producer, the seller. And that's how come over the years, Cocoa Board has been engaging in this forward sales.
Mm-hmm. And gaining.
And then it also gives some kind of visibility for planning. With that, then you can know when to go for your money. And also by the time the season is opened, you have visibility of money to pay the farmers as they bring in the cocoa. All for planning purposes and all that.
So when you're hedging, what percentage goes to forward sales and what percentage to...
normally, about 60% of the cocoa will go into, that's hedging, that's the forward sales. With a view that when the season opens, you have the bulk of the harvest coming from October up to December. So you need that money, ready. Said that as the farmers bring the cocoa, you pay them mm-hmm. without any delay. Mm-hmm. And that's why you go in for that. Now, what has happened is that last year, because of El Nino, and El Nino means extreme weather conditions. Mm-hmm. Last year, we have excessive rainfall. And most of the cocoa farmlands, the landscape got waterlogged. Cocoa doesn't like too much water. And when soils are waterlogged, it affects the flowers and everything. So we lost most of our flowers last year. Mm. And this thing happened from last year, April, May, June. April, May, June, July is the period for the cocoa trees to flower and fruit. And then by August, the fruits are developing. by September, October, then they are matured and ripened for harvesting. The last year, the whole of the period, it was raining. And then came August. Ordinarily in August, there's no rainfall or not much rainfall. But last year, August was, heavily raining. And that affected the crop totally.
Yes, it was the wettest August. But
it was the wettest year, the wettest month, August, and so on and so forth. So the El Nino, that's what we call El Nino effect. It was brought by these, weather changes. So the El Nino effect affected not only Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Cameroon, and then elsewhere. It also brought about severe dryness. Temperatures were so high that the crops couldn't withstand. Ecuador and Peru and all those places. And this has brought about a global shortage of cocoa.
All right.
And is there this global shortage of cocoa that has triggered price, rise.
Right.
All because today, the chocolate manufacturer needs cocoa immediately, instantly. He doesn't want it 6 months time because there's shortage of cocoa in the market. So if you can get cocoa, the exposure, there's no risk exposure to anybody. And he's prepared to pay for anything. And that's what is, preparing prices up.
Good. That's fine. So the El Nino has affected the market.
The worst is the price is up there. There's no cocoa.
Right.
There's no cocoa in the market.
That's why the price is high.
The trees don't have
supply and demand.
Yes, the trees don't have. The trees are not producing any fruits for you to sell.
Right.
And so price keeps on
going up.
Yes.
Now, so globally, there's a problem with El Nino.
Yes.
However, within that global market, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we account for 60%.
Yes.
So a lot of what's happening globally is because of what's happening in our countries. So let's look at some of the other constraints. El Nino is once in a while, but there are other factors that have been affecting cocoa production over some years. Let's look at them. Let's start with you, Edward Carraway. What do you think are the major constraints now threatening the cocoa industry?
Well, I would think that one most singular challenge for cocoa production today and then into the future, because this is a perennial crop. This is a crop that survives a number of years. So whatever happens today has a bigger effect on it tomorrow. So if the conditions today are favorable, it can affect it favorably years to come. If it is negative, it will also affect it negatively even beyond this the current year. It's galamsey.
Galamsey.
In my view, it's just galamsey.
For you, it's the number one challenge.
It's the number one challenge. You see, the galamsey effect is both direct and indirect.
And for viewers who may not know what galamsey is, let's explain that that's illegal. We're talking about illegal mining.
Yeah, this is illegal mining. It affects cocoa production directly and indirectly. Directly is when the cocoa trees, farms are taken over by the galamseyers. Either they cut down the trees or they mine under the trees and make the tree, unhealthy. These trees also behave like human beings. They need a certain quietness and certain healthy environment for them to be able to live their normal lives, and that is to be able to fruit well. So when they are disturbed, then it will also affect their output. It matters not how much you have induced them, there will still be that effect. So one, directly taking over cocoa lands, destroying the cocoa trees, and then making it difficult to produce. That's one. The other one is that, as we talked about the Honorable Edo has also indicated about that the cocoa trees do not like mushy, soils. It affects them. Now, with the interference of the galamsey, in some places, the farms are flooded. because they just pumped their dirty water into it and so on. So you can imagine that particular farm will certainly fall into that danger of the soils getting very mushy. The other one is that because a certain atmospheric humidity must always be present, and galamsey destroys not only the cocoa trees but even the environment. It destroys the forest that is there. It destroys any other vegetation, and then it also affects the rivers. All this put together certainly impacts, negatively on the production of cocoa. Now, if you look at the galamsey, what I see, I'm not seeing it ending today or tomorrow. I don't know when it will end. So the danger is there. And apart from that, the most significant part of the galamsey, the illegal mining, is that whatever it leaves behind is so monumental, huge distraction that the country does not, in my view, I stand for correction, does not have the capacity, the technology, and the resources to do reclamation. Because it involves huge, outlay of what? Capital and technology to be able to reclaim the land so that those lands can, again, be suitable for the production of agricultural produce, including cocoa. So galamsey is one singular thing. Now the rivers, I stand, again, I'm not a scientist, but I think that there is a symbiotic relationship between human beings and the environment and other living organisms. When you move today to the cocoa growing area, you will go with your bottled water, you may go with your sachet water, you will drink. What about the other living organisms that used to drink from the rivers? The water that is not good for us to drink is not also good for those living organisms. Some of them may die off because of the chemicals that are there, just like some of the chemicals could kill it. So again, the effect of killing and demobilizing all other living organisms that depend on the rivers which have been polluted and so on would eventually, have an effect on cocoa production and then agricultural production. So galamsey for me is the most singular risk, danger, challenge for cocoa today and then into the future.
Thank you. And Joseph, sorry, Ibrahim, yes. Assuming that El Nino is just a temporary effect,
yes,
how do you rank the challenges facing the cocoa industry right now?
Well, I will rank climate change as number one, because that's a global phenomenon. You have global warming, of course, in terms of emissions, I always say that my country plays a very insignificant role. You have fossil fuels combustion mainly in the industrialized countries, so they contribute more to greenhouse gases emissions. But then, whatever is happening there in the industrial world, has effect on us. This is what is changing the atmospheric conditions. So at times when we don't expect rain, the rains come. When you want rains, the rains don't come. That's for the cocoa. And that's why I'm saying climate change is number one, because it's made planning, unpredictable.
So climate change is number
one. Number two had to do with what my good friend mentioned, that is illegal mining, galamsey. Now, ordinary, when the rains are failing, you should have been doing irrigation to mitigate the situation. But then, almost all the rivers in the cocoa growing areas are polluted. Cocoa Board, Manu, went to the African Development Bank to secure some $600 million US. Eventually, you have to return $250 million USD. Part of that money was intended for irrigation. we commissioned the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority to do a pre-appraisal for us, assessment. And the report they brought was that almost all the rivers were contaminated. And you cannot use that murky, muddy water to do anything with cocoa. You cannot use it for spraying. And these days, farmers have to, transport water from the house in Aboboya to the farms, making farming even very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, the farmer gets to the nearest stream around the farm, and then he fetches the water to do the mass spraying and all that. But now, you dare not, because the leaves have process, which we call the stomata. Mm-hmm. And once you spray this muddy water onto it, the mud is going to block, this stomata. And within a short time, you find all the leaves coming down. Mm-hmm. The trees will die. You cannot also use it for irrigation, because it means that you have to be changing your filters almost every day. You have to be changing. It will be so expensive. And you can also use boreholes because they are not reliable. Elsewhere, anywhere you've gone, Ecuador, Peru, even Brazil, which is now about to rejuvenate its cocoa distance, they are depending on running water, surface running water, that's rivers, to do irrigation. Why can't we do same here? All because of galamsey. Mm-hmm. Galamsey is not only affecting the water that the cocoa farms will need, it's also affecting even the microclimate, the ecosystem of the place. Because, cocoa doesn't like too much water, as I've indicated. Mm-hmm. So it's best on well-drained land. And therefore, the adjoining swamps, as you know, cultivate cocoa. Mm. And the swamps are a reservoir. They are themselves a reservoir of water. Nature's own wisdom has created them as huge reservoirs that contain water. And during the dry season, evaporation from these swamps actually impacts on the cocoa. Well, in the morning, when you're going to the cocoa farm, you have a lot of, dew falling on the cocoa. Mm-hmm. And the stomata absorb, mm-hmm. and then you see the cocoa trees always evergreen, flourishing. They don't just shed their leaves, unlike maybe in the temperate areas whereby during the winter you go there, all trees are shed. No, you don't see these things on cocoa farms. But what is happening is that the first target of illegal miners will be the swamp. Mm-hmm. That's where
the swamp around the cocoa.
The swamp around the cocoa, adjoining the cocoa farm. So that's where they go and mine. And once they excavate, they create a pit, a deep pit there. One, the ecosystem has been disrupted, completely destroyed. So that macro climate is no more. Number two, the moisture, the water under the cocoa trees, will then drain. Because once you create a pit, there's a dip. So water under the cocoa trees, that the soil water moisture will drain into the pit. And then you find the cocoa trees dying. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, there's the other aspect whereby sometimes they deliberately, store the effluent, the effluent of the mining. That's the waste water. They block it to create a pool, and then if the farmer is resistant to allow mining on his farm, the next time he comes, they've opened, the pool of the waste water to flood the farm. To flood the farm.
So it's a war. It sounds like a war out there.
Yes, it's a real war. And now they are even going beyond that because they've almost finished all the swamp areas. And once the swamp areas have been mined, the next target are the cocoa farms themselves. So you find And therefore, if cocoa is not going to have a future, it's not going to play any role in Ghana's future, that's tomorrow, then it will be illegal mining. Because if it wasn't illegal mining, climate change can be mitigated through irrigation. And you have, it rains here, and therefore you have a lot of water bodies in all cocoa growing areas. My fear is that, and I've always been expressing it, is that the discharge of silt, when you go and then the what they call the chamfan, that the processing of the mine, the earth that had been excavated and then being washed, that the washing, you have a lot of silt being run into these rivers. And the muddy water that you see, the milky water you see, is all silt. And as the river is running, the silt, settle at the bottom of the river, the base of the river, and eventually or increasingly, all the river channels are getting silted. If you are not careful, if this thing continues, I can say that by 30, 40 years, major river like the Ankobra, which is a sport area, the Pra, another sport area, the Ofen, which is also a sport area, all these rivers will disappear. Because once their basins are silted, choked, like in a gutter, once it's choked, then when it rains, the water has no channel to flow in. So it spreads and then causes flooding all over. Immediately after the rain, you go there, there's no water.
But from what you're saying, we should not even dare contemplate a future without cocoa, because it also means a future without many.
The cocoa will not even be there.
The cocoa won't be there.
Fear is
but
that
we will also be being poisoned.
My fear is that, you see, we are compromising the future of generations to be born, children yet unborn. If all these rivers are destroyed, if they disappear, if these rivers disappear, how are children, let's say in 50 years to come, 60 years to come, how are they going to get water to drink? It means Ghana will be importing water at that time, which is very dangerous.
To do, are we not?
So it's not just. Then the other problem had to be cocoa swelling shoot virus disease.
Swelling shoot disease.
Yeah, the cocoa swelling shoot virus disease. It's also another major problem. But that one has an answer, a kind of solution. It has no chemical remedy so far. They've done research into it since 1938. The first detection of the virus was in 1936. That's what triggered the establishment of the West African Cocoa Research Institute, WACRI, which was formerly because the virus is found in the whole of West Africa, in the forest. And what CREG, Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana, has been able to do is to, find a way to deal with the problem. Once the trees are affected, within a matter of 2 years, they die completely and become wood, dead wood.
Within 2 years.
Yeah, they die and become dead wood. So what CREG have done is that when these trees are affected, you try and then eliminate them. If they are seen early, then they are eliminated. So you encircle them. If one tree is affected, it may be even in a asymptomatic condition, that is there, the fruiting is not good, and then the offshoots from it are swollen, the leaves appeal and that kind of thing. Once all these signs are there, it means that the tree has been affected. Then you do encircled, removal of trees around it because it's a virus, and you wouldn't know whether the virus is latent in surrounding trees. So you just remove them just to contain the situation. But when it's widespread, then it means that all the trees will have to be, removed.
This is a very grim scenario we're painting today.
Yeah, and it's been there. Unfortunately, before 2017, the treatment was just left in the hands of the farmers to do, and it's very expensive to do that. In fact, the latest assessment that we did for the World Bank and also for the AADB, you need about not less than $4,000 for 1 hectare, rehabilitation to be done. $4,000, and ordinary farmers cannot do it. And what aggravates the problem is that ordinary a farmer can cultivate just one acre a year. Any farmer, if it's more than 1 acre, then they call it a pole. A pole, 40-ounce pan, square. That's a little over 1 acre. Which ordinary a farmer can do 1 acre, plant the following year another 1 acre. Land preparation, investment, all that. That's the ordinary. If there's no disease, nothing. Land preparation, the planting and everything, investment, 1 acre a year. Now, by the 3rd year, the farmer wants to consolidate the first 2 farms, so there will be no cultivation. Maybe the 4th year, no cultivation. The 5th year, another 1 acre. Therefore, if a farmer tells you that he has 10-acre farm, he might have spent 15 years life investment. Now, when the disease strikes, the farmer cannot go the same pace of 1 acre a year. But once he cultivates, once he rehabilitates the first acre, leaving the 9 acres, the disease can come and reinfect the 1 acre that is cultivated. So the cultivation of the disease farms, or what we call the rehabilitation, had to be done en bloc. If it's 10 acres that are affected, you go in, you cut everything and replant within 1 year. So your 10-year investment ought to be deployed and applied within just 1 year. No farmer can do that.
So now we've understood we painted quite a grim picture.
No farmer can do that.
What do we see as a solution?
And in the past, only seedlings were given to farmers to go and do it. They can't do it. So if now the farms are struck by this disaster, you should call it as a national disaster.
Right.
So it means the state will have to intervene for them. That's how come government agreed that Ghana Cocoa Board should go to FDB, African Development Bank, take money, and then intercede, that's intervene for the farmers. And so the rehabilitation is being done, absolutely by Ghana Cocoa Board. We've gone for the money. We do the cutting. And when we are doing the cutting, it's total, contiguous. Every affected area is cut. It's a major intervention.
It sounds very major
intervention. All these are being done for farmers. So then what is the question of exploitation?
Well, let's look now to round off our conversation. Let's look at the question of solutions, because we painted quite a grim picture today of the challenges.
Yes.
And do we see any solutions? Let's start with you, Edward. Anyway,
well,
what is needed to move this?
Yeah, solutions are created. Solutions are not gifted to anybody, because solutions must be targeted and must be surgical, must be addressing a problem in context. So we have this problem with that is affecting cocoa production. we have to take a decision as a country as to whether or not we still want cocoa to be the mainstay going into the future.
Mm-hmm.
If it is our decision that we don't want it to be the mainstay of the economy because we are fed up with it or we've gotten other sources of revenue and we don't need it, then we can sit down and watch the destruction of cocoa as it is now. Because we've all seen that the way things are going today, if concrete and urgent steps are not taken, then it will not be long. Cocoa will lose that, role that it plays in our economy. Policy failure is, to some extent, a policy decision. Galamsey is a criminal act. It's never acceptable. So there's no way out we can allow criminality to continue to fester and grow to the extent that it destroys the entire environment. It is not only about cocoa now, because cocoa doesn't stand alone. And the discussions here shows that cocoa does best with the rest of the environment.
Right.
It's not like a building where you could just go and put it up there and standing there alone. It doesn't need probably some other complements. But this is the truth. It lives in the same ecosystem. If the rest of its members, family members, that is the community of the environment, goes extinct, cocoa will not also grow well. So there is a future. The solution is clear. It is a decision to be taken to say, one, we are going to stop Galamsey. Because there's no, you can't manage it. You can't manage the Galamsey. The destruction it leaves behind cannot even be reclaimed. It's not like in any other land use where if one day you don't want to continue to grow oil palm on your farm, you can cut down the oil palm trees and grow rubber, or cut down the rubber trees and grow cocoa. Once Galamsey takes place on the farm, and what we know and we see, it leaves behind, you cannot go back there and use it for any other agricultural activity at all, unless you reclaim it, and we don't have that capacity now. You see, this country, once upon a time, was not a leading producer of cocoa. We knew that it was brought from somewhere. It was not even part of our environment. Mm-hmm. It was brought in, we planted it, we nurtured it. Today, we are, a major producer of cocoa. It also means that come years to come, it is possible Ghana can lose its place as being a major producer of cocoa. Other countries will take over. But it will all depend on how we want to manage our cocoa industry. So first and foremost, we must stop the Galamsey, because it's not only directly destroying cocoa, but even destroying rivers. Like he said, all river bodies are silted, the rivers are silted, not to talk about the poisoning. There's no aquatic life in those rivers again, because you can't find fishes there, you can't find anything there. You can't use the water for anything as it stands now. In future, that water will not even be there. Is there any country in this world without rivers?
Indeed.
How are we going? So, it's the bottom line is for us to take the decision now.
And beyond that, obviously that's going to need a lot of political will. Beyond that question of political will that will be needed to resolve the issue of Galamsey, do you see any solution? Do you see any initiatives that could help Cocoa Board itself to play its role? Cocoa Board has historically been the stabilizing force, created in terms of both pricing and spraying for the farmers. What do you see as the future for Cocoa Board to assert itself within this environment?
Well, for me, there are certain things you must be able to, when you want to solve problems, you need to locate the problems, to segregate the problems. Cocoa Board has a role to play. But what role do they have to play? And where are they not playing? And what do they need to play that role so that you can support them? There are other external factors that are beyond the domain of cocoa board. The Galamsey is beyond the domain of cocoa board. What do you want them to do? They can come out with all the initiatives, but those initiatives cannot work because the external forces are just beyond them. Cocoa board cannot go and stop the Galamsey because they will chase them away. And all the things they are doing, the rivers, they don't own the rivers. They don't have the authority, the capacity to go and stop people from mining in the rivers. It is outside their mandate. Their mandate is policy. Their mandate is policy, in my view, to facilitate, as the law says, facilitate what? Production of cocoa. That presupposes that there is an environment good for production of cocoa. The lands are there, the waters are there, the humidity, atmospheric humidity conditions are okay for cocoa production. They now facilitate it. They come about with improved seedlings, like he's saying, dealing with these diseases, supporting the farmers to produce, buying the cocoa, exporting it, and all that. That is that facilitation role. But what the major problem that is facing cocoa today is not about lack of that facilitation role. No, it's not. That is why you need to separate the issues to know who you can hold responsible and who not hold responsible. He said, when we go to do negotiations, I know the issues that I should hold him on. You are the chief executive, I know what he can do. But sometimes when I make a mistake and hold him for what he cannot do, I will just hold him for nothing. That is why it is important to do proper analysis of the problems and then to know who can deal with this issue and who cannot deal with that issue. So for me, the future of cocoa production in Ghana is not so much about what cocoa board can do. It's so much about the factors we have talked about, that is the Galamsey, which is outside the control of cocoa board.
So if we assume that this question of Galamsey has something to do with the fact that there are a lot of youth who are unemployed and looking for opportunities which they think are more lucrative than others, is there any way that you have talked about the idea of cocoa board setting up a bank like Exim Bank? Is there any way, do you think, that could somehow give cocoa board more leverage to perhaps work with the youth to create more employment? Already we've heard that they employ 48,000 people every year to do the spraying. Do you see any possibility that such a bank would give cocoa board the kind of mandate that could change the situation?
I was looking at it from the point that cocoa board has preceded all of us sitting here, and it has been being managed all this time. I was hoping, dreaming that I would see Ghana's economy in different directions being supported, coming out that directly from cocoa board. And then we know that every year, periodically, they had to go for syndicated loan to do that. Now, yes, they go for the syndicated loan to support the production of cocoa. I was also thinking that if cocoa had managed cocoa, and when I'm talking about managing cocoa, I'm not talking about one person alone or one regime like his tenure of office. We would have been able to use the cocoa to leverage other parts of the economy. Even though this is a renewable production area, unlike gold, which is non-renewable. Once it is exhausted, it's exhausted. We cannot sacrifice cocoa for that. So we could have couldn't we have had a bank? Why do we have to go and take loan all the time? Couldn't we by now have created a bank under some name, which itself could then be lending money, supporting cocoa board, and also lending money to other areas of our economy? As a country, we have not been able to do that so far. It is also there for the future, because the future is is unending. What we have not been able to do in the past, and if we think it is still viable and then it is good for us to do it, we should be dreaming about it. You see, we should be dreaming about it. But whilst we are dreaming about that, my major concern is just about the problem that is at the root of cocoa production. All that we are talking about is on condition that we continue to produce cocoa. Now, I'm saying some farmers are chased away from their farms, literally, by flooding their farms with the dirty water, as you did indicate. You are forced to now sell your farm to them. Not to talk about, we'll get to a point where they'll come directly and tell you that give us your farm, or if you don't give us your farm, we'll take it by force, because they're emboldened to do that. So we need to deal with that. So for me, that's how I came by the principle that we should be looking at an exim bank, and we should put it as part of the dreams that we should be looking at as we try to solve the problems that are confronting cocoa production, not cocoa board. Problems of cocoa board are separate for me from problems of the cocoa industry. And we can look at all of them together. Cocoa board has got its own problems. If they need funding, if they need certain, how are they going to do that? That is problems of cocoa board. Problems of the industry, which is bigger, cocoa production, are also there, and which we talk about the galamsey and so on. You see. So I looked at it from this perspective, and I think that we need a real analysis, and then to decide whether we should not go all out. If we know we are not going to be able to deal with galamsey, then we should know that there's no future for cocoa production. If we want cocoa to have future, then we must deal with the galamsey. I'm not saying that eliminate it, because it used to be there in a certain form that is not a threat to anybody's life. But today, everybody's life is threatened. As we even sit in this studio, agricultural produce we don't know where they come from. And they migrate from Takrady, from this place, and then we are eating it here. It affects almost everybody. So we must deal with that bigger issue.
And Joseph, sorry, let me just say that again.
Yeah.
And Joseph Wahin Edu,
Yes.
what do you think of that idea of setting up a bank? Is that something we should dream about? Is that something you would dream about as a way of both stabilizing prices for cocoa farmers and also contributing to the development of this country?
Stabilization of producer price has always been at the heart of cocoa board policy decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we should take note that over the years, Ghana Cocoa Board, together with the stakeholders, have been giving the farmer a minimum guaranteed price. We don't see it anywhere in the world. There's only Ghana whereby the farmer is given a minimum guaranteed price. In the past 7 years, when prices plummeted, declined at the international market, Cocoa Board had to step in, to save the industry. Of course, we were faced with two challenges. One, whether to reduce the farmer's price, because the world market price had fallen by 30%, from over $3,000 in 2016 to around $2,000 in 2017. And by 2018, price of cocoa was $1,850 per ton. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the farmer was receiving 7,600 Ghana cedis per ton. That translates, that time, 4.3, 4.4 cedis to the dollar. That translates to about $1,700 and something dollars for the farmer alone. So if you're going to sell your cocoa and you are receiving $1,850 and you are giving the farmer over $1,700, what are you left? What are you left? And we have certain operational costs that are mandatory, obligatory. you cannot say that the LBC, the last buying company that's going to buy the cocoa at the farm gate, cannot be paid. You cannot say that the cocoa that had been bought will not be hauled, transported. So all these costs are mandatory, they're obligatory, inevitable that you have to pay. And if you have to pay all these operational costs, it means that you have to look at the farmer's price to reduce it. But at that point, you have to weigh the corporate commercial concern as against the public, the national interest, that's the farmer's interest. So the national interest versus the profitability of corporate cocoa board. You weigh the two. And for me, I think the farmer's interest should reign supreme. Because I'm talking in 2017, this was a time when Galamsey, was about to explode. And I always use this word. It was about to explode in this country. Number two, because prices fell, farmers had lost interest in cocoa farming. You could see the despondency in Brongahafo. And that's why he went to cultivate rubber. Because, and then oil farmers, because farmers were losing interest in cocoa farming. You go to Brongahafo, you go to the Wenchi area, all that area used to be cultivating cocoa. Techiman and all those places, Brekum. You go there today, all those lands that were previously under cocoa were converted into
Pits,
cashew.
Oh, cashew.
Into cashew. So you go there, cashew all over. And the farmer was saying they used to cultivate cocoa. Why? Because they lost interest in cocoa. You come to Eastern region.
Because the price had dropped.
And before price wearing all that good, so farmers were losing interest in cocoa. And also because of the yield per acre, the yield was so low. In Ghana, average was 450 kilos. Less than $3 per acre. Imagine a farmer, with all the toil and sweat, and then he gets $3 per acre a year. That time you multiply by 475 Ghana cedis. It's less than 1,000, less than 1,200 cedis a year. Nobody can survive in that enterprise. So, meanwhile, cocoa farming should be business. And therefore, if the farmer is getting that peanut from his investments and his, labor, then it was not worth it. So we find a lot of cocoa farm being converted. So we have to take that decision. That is a national interest as against a corporate commercial interest. And for us, we felt that the national interest was supreme, that the farmers, and because cocoa, as we've said, is a backbone economy, you don't have to go and take a decision that will affect that national interest, allow farmers to dispose of their land to illegal miners. Because once you reduce the farmer's price, the decision was to reduce the farmer's price or not to reduce. Once you reduce the farmer's price, it means you're giving them license to dispose of all their cocoa farmlands to illegal miners, and to have been the worst decision for this country. So we then decided that, okay, then let's go to Bank of Ghana and look for money to show up, to cushion whatever we were getting from the international market to enable the farmer stay in business. So Cocoa Board went to the central bank for cocoa bearers. In 2017, 18, 19, we were borrowing. That's how come the cocoa bear. So people think that, the chief executive, he's incurred a lot of debt for Cocoa Board. It's just that it was a major national decision that we have to take together with the board. And for us, we have to save the industry. Prices are falling 30%. You cannot go and reduce the farmer's price by 30%. No. So we decided, no, let's go in and then borrow to cushion the farmers. More or less, Cocoa Board then became the shield receiving the shocks from the international market.
And you don't believe that setting up a development bank could actually increase the
It's
value of that shield?
to me, well, it's something that maybe we will look at it, but to me, that is not the heart of the matter. It's not necessarily a bank, because the market, plays, it's a very volatile market that we are dealing with. Just as prices are now going up, they can't come down at any time. And at that point, we will still need a bank and that kind of thing. And money we do forces. So going into 2025, 26, farmers should expect better, because we've sold the cocoa ahead of time. So that is it. Now, let me take the same question that you posed, whether the industry, whether cocoa has a place, in the future. I would take it from another perspective, very positive perspective. The question is cocoa important? Let's look at it from that angle. And I would say that, yes, apart from the economy, just as we said, is the mainstay of the economy, apart from the fact that we are seeing that it's also important for the environment. Cocoa is a forestry. When you have cocoa trees on every farm, we are talking of, per hectare, we are talking of about 1,200 trees. So in that stand, they cause a lot of carbon sequestration, which is good for the environment and for the whole world, because carbon ought to be removed, that is captured and then converted into oxygen for us as human beings. So we need the cocoa farms, which is a very good thing. Unless you have CSSVD striking on any farm, cocoa trees can be there more than 200 years. They can still be there fruiting. So that's another thing. Now, there is another angle that we haven't looked at. I've talked about the economy. I've talked about the environment. You talked about employment, the farmers, and then all the indirect jobs, cocoa board staff, the number of, we have permanent staff of about 10,000 in it, mass spraying, yes, and so on and so forth. People are doing pruning right now on farms, 48,000 and all that. And then the other, auxiliary facilities, like the license buying companies, the haulage transporters, and so when you bring all of them on board, you are talking of about maybe close to 1 million or so workforce. Now, when we set all that aside, what had not been considered is the health benefits of cocoa. We haven't looked at that at all. And most recent research is telling us that cocoa can even stimulate, stem cells. And stem cells, how important stem cells are for the body. Because on a daily basis, the body is losing a lot of cells. And you have the bone marrow there to produce stem cells. These are like embryo stem cells that repair or replace dead cells. And if cocoa can, trigger that, how can Ghana afford to lose cocoa? Because in US and all these places, they are now converting cocoa into cocoa supplements for people to take. And there's a study now in Boston going on women who are more than 60 years, to see how cocoa can enhance their cognitive performance and then restore even loss of memory. Can you believe this?
Interesting.
All these things are happening. The nutrition and health benefits of cocoa are just enormous. It's a superfood. And if Ghana is producing this superfood, If you are taking cocoa on a regular basis, you don't need a doctor. You don't have to go to the hospital. You know, you don't have to go to the hospital. A headache, even malaria. You live in Africa here with all the mosquitoes. You will not have malaria. Can you believe this?
Interesting.
You know, so it has these, benefits that Ghana cannot afford to lose all its cocoa, because we are going into a future whereby cocoa is going to play a major role in the health and nutrition of mankind. If Ghana wants to roll back the savanna, the grassland, we can use cocoa to do that. So we must know that cocoa is so important and holds a lot for the future of this country.
Well, that sounds like a very good place to end this conversation. As challenging as the issues that we have raised are, there are also equally more compelling reasons to keep our cocoa industry. Thank you, Joseph Boahen Adu and Edward Karawe, for such a stimulating and fascinating discussion. We hope we'll have time to return to these issues again in the near future.
Hopefully so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of this week's Your Ghana, My Ghana show. Thank you for joining us on Graphic Online TV. And please don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And do join us again for the second part of this show next week, focusing on what it will take for Ghana to be counted as a world-class chocolate manufacturing nation. My guests today have been Joseph Boahen Adu of Cocoa Board and Edward Karawe of Gawul, and I am Dede Amano Wilkes. Hope to see you again next week.
For more news, please visit our website graphic.com.gh or follow us on Facebook at Daily Graphic and on YouTube and Twitter at GraphicGH.
Subscribe now.